For as long as we can recall, football's been a cornerstone of America, but it would be unbelievable to visualize the United States without it. So for today's video, are you ready for some gossip and scandal? Because we'll be telling you plenty of secrets that the NFL is trying hard to hide. From the harassment women have faced in the NFL to general health concerns and much more. Let's hop right in. First off, brain trauma and concussions are still happening. It should come as no surprise that most non-football fanatics hear the word NFL and the first thing that comes to their mind is terrible brain damage, thanks to scientific studies, Netflix movies, and the league's own incompetence in completing any endeavors to investigate the injuries in over 30 years. For years, the NFL kept quiet on the issue of brain disease until Dr. Amalo's trustworthy research put them on the map and forced them to act. Dr. Amalo came across the bodies of former NFL players suffering from depression and memory loss, but the NFL has been in contradiction about this link to be safe from lawsuits. There were many attempts made to cover it all up though. Lately, the Supreme Court consented to compensation between the league and some players. It ultimately compelled the NFL to lose roughly around $1 billion over the next 5 decades to athletes with brain damage. It's a heck of a triumph for the players, and the repercussions are still soaring through today and will presumably continue to persist every day of those 5 decades. Scientists foresee and believe that a third of ex-NFL athletes will ultimately end up with some brain disease, like dementia or Alzheimer's, or in some severe cases, the supremely terrifying Lou Gehrig's illness. Truly tragic for the sportsmen who risk it all just for our entertainment. Next up, the referee situation was never good. Ever seen a call blown or missed by a referee? Or have you ever seen a football fan being upset over an unfair reaction, where they may or may not have wished death upon the official? Well, we have news for you. It happens often. It's basically a reflex. Here's what those fans don't see. The refs on the ground probably failed to give the match their 100% because they're working multiple jobs. Many NFL referees work part-time and have additional day jobs to attend to, from law practices to dairy farms. So if they miss a call, it may be because they've had an urgent matter from their other job creeping in, or they're just tired altogether from the multiple responsibilities. But if the fans demand better performance done by the referees, then why doesn't the league make their referees' jobs full-time? First off, most of the daytime jobs referees have enable them to earn much more than what the NFL pays them. Plus, there's not a whole lot they could offer as full-timers that they already don't offer as part-timers. However, making the change in referees' jobs to full-time would demand raised pay, benefits for the officials, and security, which would require consent from the refs union and would have to get approval from the top. If you're familiar with or keep up with the world of the NFL, you'll realize how doubtful this is to happen, particularly the part where the NFL spends more on its referees. So for now, get used to blown and missed close calls. Up next, the healthcare allotted to our favorite athletes is terrible. Our favorite NFL players are given away a wretched grade of healthcare. They have to go through stuff that will make you feel ungrateful for complaining. NFL players can only get medical care through the NFL's extensive remedy programs. But even if they do, the league and the players union don't pay sufficient money out to help cover their medical bills, if they pay out at all. So retired and injured players end up falling back to Obamacare or Medicaid, both of which come out of the taxpayers' bread boxes. Or they file for their claims in California, regardless of whether their team is based there or not, because the insurance laws are way more sympathetic and forgiving towards football players than in other states. The NFL's players' healthcare ranks very low on our list for several reasons. First of all, there are only about 24 of these programs nationwide, so it can be very challenging for players to find their way. Secondly, the speed at which the league pays out is quite low, with players having to go through different treatments and only getting enough money to cover a pinch of their medical expenses. And thirdly, players are usually forced to file claims in California, despite not being based in that state. If you believe that the NFL is doing anything to help resolve these matters, then cut it out. This is the NFL we're talking about, a league that is run by a few dozen pre-Epiphany Scrooges. They'd rather be famished than provide any money up for the health of their players. NFL has even taken many measures throughout the years that prevent players from getting health care. They've tried to retain players from filing in California by getting laws enacted there that would block them, and they've even taken athletes to court over their medical conditions. Many players ultimately resorted to one solution. They take care of themselves by self-medicating with marijuana, which is known to possess some healing abilities against head injuries. However, the league has even gone on on to introduce some harsh sanctions against marijuana and is planning to introduce more sanctions soon. And now, harassment towards women in the league. 2 years ago, 12 women who were one-time employees of the Washington football team spoke out against the NFL. While talking to the Washington Post, they claimed they were sexually harassed multiple times during their time at the club. These ladies said that while fanatics were cheering for the team, behind the doors these women had to deal with frequent verbal abuse and sexual harassment. According to the allegations, these unfortunate incidents were mostly happening under the watch of team owner Daniel Snyder. These women say that many of the head executives dismissed any complaints of wrongdoing. Snyder refused any of the supposed claims and even went on to hire a law firm to internally scrutinize the situation. After journalists began questioning the legitimacy of Snyder choosing the law firm, the NFL took control over the investigation. Meanwhile, the New York Times reported that lawyers representing the women in the investigation challenged the NFL to publicly commit to taking action to kick Snyder out as the majority owner. Beginning in 2019, the owner of the Washington football team was required to pay a fine and stay away from their facilities. Additionally, the NFL fined him $10 million for taking actions that interfered with the investigation. But because Goodell never made public the results of this investigation, its results still remains unknown. When Biden became president in 2021, he had a lot of trouble with the NFL's players. Goodell, the NFL's commissioner at the time, even fined the franchise an additional $20 million and ordered Snyder to stay away from the team's facilities for several months. And now, finally, many players earn big in the beginning but then go broke. Some people think becoming a professional player in the NFL is a free ticket to wealth for a lifetime, but the reality is very much different. While the reality is that many players go from extreme wealth on paper and living a life full of luxuries to practically being penniless in no time. It's basically difficult to think that only 3 years after filing for retirement from the game, according to Sports Illustrated, 70% of the ex-NFL players go through a financial crisis or are under financial stress because of divorce or joblessness. Most of them also practically end up with bankruptcy and no fame. A wealth management professional explained there are numerous reasons for players to go from counting dollar bills to counting nothing. The biggest reason includes players buying into private asset deals that don't end up producing major financial gains as promised. Bad private equity and chronic over-allocation into real estate is the leading problem for athletes when it comes to financial meltdowns. In addition to different people infiltrating the lives of players and asking for a fortune, NFL stars usually have little to no knowledge in finance and budgeting. Plus, some experts say that the league doesn't deliver the required knowledge to help its players prevent financial disasters. Well, that is such a tragedy, knowing full well what each player goes through. To prevent financial difficulty after retirement, players need to set budgets for themselves, like Detroit Lions' Ryan Broyles, who lived off an $80,000 a year budget for his wife and himself. And that's a wrap for this video. What do you think of the listed secrets from the NFL? And which one was the most shocking NFL secret of all time? Do you sympathize with the players or the league? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.